Hello friends, and welcome back to my blurry pink puppet hands. There we go. Now we're in focus. Today we are going to be doing a deep dive into the art supplies of Paul Rubens. This watercolor press paper board block, this watercolor block. We're going to talk about their sketchbook. Both of these are 100% cotton watercolor paper. I believe they are both cold pressed. Well, this says hot pressed, so I guess this is hot pressed. This doesn't say which one it is, but I'm pretty sure this is a cold press. We're going to be talking about their pan watercolors, which come in this very cute packaging and are pink. Have you noticed a common theme with any of these yet? I'll wait. Let me know in the comments. And I have used these watercolors a lot. These are not new to me. So I will not be doing a swatch video. I will do some comparisons for you. This is the swatch card for this set. This is a 24 set, which I have supplemented with a couple of tubes from other Paul Rubens stuff, and we'll be talking about those today as well. The tubes, this is actually combined two different sets. I have two of the 24 sets. They'll both be linked down in the description below, and I have combined them into this box. This is the swatch for one of them, and I don't know if I have a swatch for the other one in here at this moment. Probably do. Here it is. Okay, so here's the other one. So this is a 12 set and a 24 set, and I used them in a palette y'all have met before, which is this one. The palette itself is from a different company, but the paints in here are almost all Paul Rubens with a couple of Daniel Smith thrown in. So we'll be focusing on all of these today, and I'm going to be trying to stay with the Paul Rubens colors and not dip into the Daniel Smith ones. We'll be using some of these colors fresh out of the tube as well, so you can see the difference when you use a dried color that came out of a tube, a fresh tube color, and the equivalent color over in this half pan set, and I'll let you know what I think of each one. So let's jump into it. Let me get a piece of watercolor paper that I haven't used yet, and we'll get started. One nice thing about Paul Rubens paints is that they do come with pigment information. Now you'll see that this is written in Chinese, but pigment information is universal, and usually on the right side here, you probably can't read that because my camera's not focusing, but it does have the exact pigment number there, and there is light fastness information somewhere. It might have been on a different piece of paper on their website, but oh yes, it's the bottom line here is the light fastness. Let me see. This bottom line says the light fastness, with 8 being the most light fast and 1 being the least, and these are all 7s and 8s. I think there might be 1 6 in here. But if you know where to look, you can read this even if you can't read Chinese, I promise. Okay, so we're going to be testing French Ultramarine, which is B193 in the Paul Rubens color system. It is made of the Pigment PB29, which I believe that's the standard for ultramarine blues. And it has a light fastness rating of good. It's also got like 4 little plus marks on the tube versions, in addition to the ones in the booklet. And this is a half transparent watercolor, so I'm going to be doing it to keep apples to apples. This is the ultramarine blue in this set, so it's this pan. This is where I put the French Ultramarine in this set, and we're going to swatch them out on Paul Rubens watercolor paper. So let me find a page. Let's give you a little flip through. This. Okay, I don't want to do it on that page. I'm going to do it on the back because I never used the back page of my watercolor sketchbooks very effectively. So we're going to do it there. Okay, so first I'm going to show you what it looks like fresh from the tube. I could just put it directly onto the paper, but I feel like that's not giving the other two a fair shake. So I'm going to go ahead and do this on a palette. French Ultramarine is, or just ultramarine blue in general, is a very important color to have because it's very important for making purples. It seems like it will be way brighter than it needs to be for anything that looks natural, but it is one of the most important colors in any watercolor palette, and I don't think I've ever seen one that did not include it unless it was like a curated set. So, oof, that's juicy. Look at that fresh color. Okay, so y'all can see that. It doesn't look quite as vibrant on camera as it does in person. It's a lot darker, so I'm gonna try to color correct this so you can see, and I'll scan this page too so that I can pop that in here and you can see the true color. Let's go into the next one, which is going to be the dried version of the same paint that I did in my own palette, not the one that it came in an extruded pan. And all extruded means is that it wasn't hand poured. It means that a machine made the paint into like a long thin rectangle and then cut it up to put it into the palette. So right away, this one is coming through a lot more transparent, even though I'm coming straight from the pan over here, just because it is not as concentrated as pulling it right out of the tube. So, you know, watercolor tip number 1, if you want a saturated color, use it fresh out of the tube. Whee! And I would say these paints, the tube paints, are artist grade, though they are probably on the lower end of the spectrum, but I am not going to make a comment on whether or not they are because I have only very sparingly used professional grade American paints and such. This is a Chinese brand, so you can't buy it at like Michael's or anything, but you can get it on Amazon and on AliExpress. But I don't want to compare this to, say, White Knights or other more expensive brands like Sennelier, because I've never used them and I don't want to give you guys bad information. So I've chosen not to. But as far as paints I have used goes, I've used a lot of different student grades and a lot of different just hobby grade paints. And these are my favorite in my collection, and they hold up with my Daniel Smith watercolors very well. And then last but not least, we're gonna take a look at the pan for ultramarine blue and give it some water, give it a chance to activate. And we're gonna go straight from the pan to the page, unlike if I were painting where I would probably put it in the palette first. And this comes out pretty vibrant. It's not as dark as the tube paint. Again, you know, fresh from the tube is always going to be darkest, but I consider this palette to be student grade. I really enjoyed using it. I learned on it. I believe it is all the same pigments and everything. It's just that whatever Paul Rubens formulation is seems to work better as a tube paint than as a pan paint, in my opinion. But I really like these pans. Just on some of the colors, like the purple, you have to dig a little harder than you would have to with the dried paints from a tube or just fresh tube paints in order to get the same vibrancy. So here are the 3. I think actually in terms of quality, it goes tube paint is the best. The pan paint is actually very good too, and then the dried one's actually coming in last year. I am a little low on my dried pigment in this well, so that might be part of it, but the pan set performed a lot better than I was expecting it to. So I'm gonna do a painting now using the watercolor block paper, and the block and this sketchbook function very similarly. They are my favorite watercolor papers and they are very, very affordable. So this sketchbook is 100% cotton. It's got very thick, let me make a sound for you here. It's got nice thick pages and it's only $20. It's 20 sheets. You can use both sides. I don't know if you're supposed to, but I do. And you can get some really lovely layering in here. You can really go as hard as you want on this paper. And I usually just put a clip on one end of it and it really doesn't buckle much. It's a very nice watercolor paper to work with. It's very easy to work with in my opinion, and 100% cotton watercolor paper is always going to make your watercolors look better. As I've said at least one time before, sometimes you will think in life that you are bad at watercolor because you're using crummy paper, because crummy paper can even make good watercolors look bad, but good paper can make any watercolor look really good. So, oh, see, now that it's drying too, it looks like the dried out pan color is staying darker than the one that was in the extruded pan. So, you know, we're learning together. So yeah, now it's kind of, this one's the best, this one's second best, this one's third best, and remind, this is the tube, this is the dried paint from the tube, and this is the pan. So let's move this out of the way and go over to the watercolor block. I don't use this particular block as often as maybe I should. I believe this was also in the $20 range. I'll put the price on the screen. I'll go check what the most recent is and I'll have a link to in the description. So if you don't know what a watercolor block is, if you look at the side, it has a binding around the whole thing. And what that is it's glue and binding to keep the page flat, so you can't flip this page. Once you finish with your painting, you take it out and then you move on to the next one. But this way you don't need to tape your page. I did tape this, and let me explain why. It is mostly to keep it within this aspect ratio, because this paper and also the paper in that sketchbook are not in American sizing. They are in, I guess, European international sizing. So they are A4, A5, A1, A2, A3, those sizes, as opposed to American sizes, which are just done by inches. So it's like an 8x10 or a 8x8 or 5x7 or whatever. And so buying frames in the United States is difficult when this is the size of your paper. So I have trimmed it down to a standard American frame size, which is 6x8. And that also makes it easier for me to make prints out of this once I finish. So I'm going to be doing this with a mix of my dried paints and my wet paints for the darker colors, and then I'll be doing a different painting in the smaller sketchbook with this set, which I haven't used in a while, and I'm excited to get back into. Look how cute it is. You can roast me in the comments below for liking Paul Rubens products just because they're pink if you want, but I just consider that an enjoyable side benefit because they're really nice paints. So, meh. So we're starting out with a couple of tube paints. I believe I was mixing an indigo and a Payne's gray for this night sky section, which I squeezed fresh out of the tube. Because the indigo and Payne's gray in my set are both from Daniel Smith, so I was using the raw tubes for this section. I hope that this is not too fast to see what I'm doing, because I had about 2 hours of footage for this painting. I might have picked something a little too complicated for this video, but I really like how it turned out in the end, so that was cool. But I just hope it's not so fast that it is distracting to y'all. But yeah, so I really enjoy using these paints. Like I mentioned earlier, this is my main palette that I am using, other than the 2 paints that I just squeezed out of the Paul Rubens tubes. But it is a set I'm very familiar with. It is paints that I work with all the time, and this is my favorite paper to work with. So it was just a really enjoyable experience overall making this video, even though it's really long. I think this is the longest one that's on my channel so far. If you like this kind of content and like the longer form stuff, do leave me a comment and a like and maybe a subscribe, because I'm going to try to make these at least once every month or so and do more deep dives into products that I use really regularly, as opposed to just reviews of products that I learned how to use specifically for a video. I still am not going to do too many first impressions videos, or if I am giving a first impression, it will be in the context of a video that's about a different art supply or a different thing. But yeah, if you like this longer form content, do let me know, and I will try to make more of it going forward, even though it takes a little bit longer. So I really loved how these paints layered on this particular piece. I did all of my shading on Urbosa. Oh, this is fan art, by the way, for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. But I did all of my shading for the top half of her body in the same wash that I used on the sky, and I think it gave a really nice effect, and the red paint layered over it so beautifully. I'm just really happy with how that came out and very pleased. Fans of Breath of the Wild will note that this is not Urbosa's canonical outfit, but I wanted to design a new one for a few reasons. One was that I didn't think I could get her canon outfit to work in this pose. Another is that at night in the desert it's cold, and I didn't think her canonical outfit gave her enough cover. I also just like putting different outfits on characters who have designs that seem impractical for battle, so I was just kind of playing with that design. And I am also working on a Breath of the Wild fan musical project with some friends. I have been playing with designs for the various characters, especially the ones that do not appear human, which is not Urbosa, but that are more practical both to perform in and to construct. I kind of failed on the latter point with this one. This would be a difficult shirt torso piece to make, so I'm gonna revisit it. You'll probably see more of it on this channel. I'm not planning to make videos that are specifically about those costume designs, but who knows, maybe I will. If you want to see my process, I guess let me know. I might end up doing some of it digitally now that I'm better at sketching digitally in terms of my pain management, and if you don't know what I'm talking about there, check out last week's video. But yeah, I like overall the impression that this outfit gives off. I think it still looks like her without making the outfit exactly the same. I incorporated a lot of elements, but I'm going to take another pass at simplifying this. Yeah, so back to the paints. At this point, I was back into my dry pans, and I was fighting myself, even though I knew the colors I was putting down were correct, because all of the yellows were a little green tinted, and that was because, you know, it's nighttime and the light is cooler. So I figured the base color should be cooler as well. I just don't like cool yellows. So you'll see me going in there and fighting with myself and like lifting color where I probably didn't need to, but such is life, right? But it does bring me to the point that these paints, when they're still wet, are pretty easy to lift if you make a mistake, so I find that nice. And then once they are dry, it becomes harder to do so, so I think it's a really nice balance for these paints between lifting too easily and being too hard to lift. I think it's a very good set of paints in that regard. I didn't have to dig hard to get any of these colors to be as vibrant as I wanted. This set is just a joy to work with. So I'll have links in the description to where you can get Paul Rubens tubes. They have a couple of different color sets, I believe, and they're not super well labeled, but the first one I got is a 24 set of, I believe, 5 milliliter tubes, which is what most of this pan set that I have on the right is made out of. It comes in this very large pink palette, or it comes with a very large pink palette, which I do not use because it is almost the same size, if not bigger, than like my laptop. It's just very cumbersome, and I'm usually working at a desktop that is not practical for a palette that huge. I guess if you're working in a studio that would be nice, but I find it to be unwieldy. But the paints are very nice, and it has a different selection of colors than a standard watercolor paint set it does. They have a couple of inclusions in that set that I find really nice to work with and easy convenience colors to use. Like, they have an A232, which is their brilliant yellow-red hue, which is a mix of colors, and it is a very nice skin tone base for when I'm feeling too lazy to make my own skin tones. You can see it's actually the third pan in the top row here. I think that might have originally been one of the reasons I got this set, was because I wasn't very good at mixing skin tones yet, and I wanted one that was kind of built in and was a little easier to work with, but I didn't get it for a while. I think my mom got this for me for my birthday, and by that point I was pretty good at mixing skin tones, but I still really like that as a convenience color. But yeah, it has an interesting selection of colors. I believe it has a Payne's Gray and an indigo in there as well, and I really like that set. I'll have links to all of these in the description. They also have a 12 set, which is, I believe, the one that came in that blue box I showed y'all earlier. And that has your standard watercolor colors that you would get in any standard mixing set from most companies. So yeah, I definitely recommend these. I would get a palette that isn't one that they come with, because the Paul Rubens palettes are pretty large. I don't know if you can buy them empty. I'm sure you can buy empty tins, though, that are cute and pink on Amazon. So I'll have all sorts of links in the description for assembling your own palette from these paints, if that's something you're interested in doing. I've been looking around for the 12 set that I bought, but I think I got it off of AliExpress and not Amazon because I can't find the same one. So I've linked the 36 set and the 24 set that I mentioned, and I believe the 36 set has the whole color range that I have talked about so far. I've also linked a bunch of different palettes below that you could try out. The Magello Airtight Watercolor 18 well palette is a nice one, and then there's a couple of assorted tins down in the description. Those are affiliate links, which means that while I am not sponsored, I do get a little kickback if you happen to purchase from those links, so I'd really appreciate it if you're looking into getting these paints anyway. I've also linked a combination of their 12 pan set and sketchbook down in the description below. And we'll be getting into the pan sets in a separate painting here in a moment, but that set I think would be very nice. I have not tried it personally, but it has the colors from this 24 set in there, and it's just missing the convenience colors, which are the ones that I find are a little harder to use. So as a mixing palette, I think the 12 set would be very good and do everything you need it to do, almost as well, if not as well, as these tube paints. So yeah, as you can tell, I really like these paints. I'm trying to come up with some cons. The only one I can really think of is that you can only really get these paints on AliExpress and Amazon. While I am an Amazon affiliate, I am not a huge fan of Amazon's work workplace practices. I'm not saying boycott them or anything, especially because their workers haven't called for anything of that nature at this time, but some people don't like to shop from Amazon. I only shop there personally when I have to, so only being able to get these from Amazon or AliExpress, which has its own issues, and also the shipping is very slow, is definitely something in the cons column, if that's something that concerns you. You can't get these from like Jerry's Artorama or from Dick Blick or Michael's or whatever other art stores are in your area, though I suppose you could write into those companies and request that they start stocking these paints, and maybe they would someday. I don't really know how art store supply chain works, so don't at me about that, I guess. If you do know how art store supply chains work, let me know in the comments, because I'd be really interested in finding out if that would be possible, because I would love to be able to buy these paints from more mainstream art stores, and I'm sure a lot of other people would enjoy these paints too. So yeah, I realize I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot by being like, my affiliate links are down below, and then also dunking on Amazon here a little bit later, but I don't want to be dishonest with y'all, so I just wanted to be completely transparent. I still think that the affiliate program that they have is nice. It's a good thing for independent creators. And, you know, any time you buy from an affiliate link, that's a little bit less money that Jeff Bezos makes. So that's at least a little bit fun. So yeah, that's my leftist soapbox for this week. Workers of the world unite, etc., etc. I was a sociology major, so I think about these things all the time. Anyway, so we're actually out of the painting portion of this painting. I'm just going in and darkening up a couple of areas with a colored pencil. Actually a few colored pencils, and I'm adding a couple of highlights as well. I struggle to leave areas of light on my painting and plan them well enough in advance to get them to come out right every time. Sometimes I do better than others, but colored pencils are a very useful tool for me in making up for my lack of expertise. And yeah, so the moral of the story is use the tools you have at your disposal. Mixed media is wonderful, and stay in school, kids. And I think I've said this before, but if I haven't, or if you forgot, I'll reiterate. I think you can really use any colored pencils to do these. I'm using like Faber-Castell and Prismacolors, but you could do this with a pack of Crayola colored pencils just fine. I am not a luxury brands person in any sense of my personality, and I'm really passionate about making art accessible to people who are also on a budget. So yeah, that's why most of my reviews are about budget art supplies. I think it's important to know which art supplies you can skimp on, and then which ones it makes more sense to invest in higher quality versions of the product for. But if Paul Rubens is anything to go by, it is proof that quality and price do not always go hand in hand. So yeah, that is my spiel. This is the finished painting. I did touch it up a little bit in post, so here is the touched up version. The touch up is mostly just I moved Zelda's eye a little bit because it got skewed while I was working in the colored pencil layer. But yeah, we're gonna move into the next one now, and it is also going to be Legend of Zelda themed. Woo! So for this painting, I sketched out a silent princess flower because I've been trying to get better at flowers anyway, and I wanted to create a scene with some depth, so I put Hyrule Castle in the background. This also I created to act as a poster or album cover for that Breath of the Wild musical I've been talking about. I will have a link in the description, by the way, to the composer's Tumblr so that y'all can check it out. Their name is Sval, and they are extremely talented, and there are a few demos up on there right now, some of them featuring me, but they are currently on hiatus, and we will be posting more demos in the future, but right now we're all pretty busy. So yeah, I can also throw up the final poster on the screen when I finish with this, but let's talk about the paints first. So this pan set was the one I learned on mostly. Like, I had used other sets before this, but I didn't use them as well. Like, this is the first quality set of paints that I owned. So using them is both very nostalgic, and this set is just very near and dear to my heart. Although I have been considering doing a giveaway for them when I have enough subscribers, just because I don't really use them anymore. They just kind of sit there unused, and I would prefer that they went to somebody who will use them. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know in the description, and also, you know, tell your friends about this video, because I don't want to do a giveaway with 3 people in it. That seems a little bit silly. And like it would be easier to just literally give them to a person who needs them, which is also a thing. You know, if you want them, let me know in the description and maybe we can work something out. But yeah, I really like the convenience colors of this set, and it's easy to use to make things like turquoise, and it's got a lot of really nice green earth tones. I've noticed a lot of watercolor sets, particularly budget ones, have a ton of greens. I don't know if that is because green pigment is easy to come by and cheap or not. I would like to research that more in the future. It was just something I noticed that I thought I would mention. But yeah, I really like the earth tones in this set. I really like the turquoise sky blue that I was able to achieve here by mixing. I do have a convenience tube of turquoise paint, and it is usually easier to use that color than to mix your own, but it is a hard color to mix, and it speaks to the strengths of this palette that it is very easy to do so anyway. I don't know if it would be as easy to do on the 12 set because I don't know if it has the same range of greens and blues that this one does. So that was something I wanted to mention specifically about the 24 set that I found very convenient and nice, was that it's very easy to mix these light turquoise and cyan colors. I really like the watercolor tin itself. It is a standard 24 pan tin. You can buy these open stock, a lot of other brands use them, but I find it to be very convenient. It's not too big, unlike the palettes that they sell with their tubes, which are plastic and enormous. This is a very manageable size. You would think that 24 pans would feel bigger than this, but it really doesn't. So I really like the presentation of their palettes for the pan watercolors specifically. I think they have a good range of colors in them. I think most of the paints are pretty easy to activate, and they hold up really well. I mean, I've had this set for, I think, 2 years now, and they still work just as well as they did the first day I got them and opened them. So I'm very impressed with how well this set has lasted the test of time, and I really like the tin, and really the only thing is that I just needed colors that were in the dark range that were more punchy, which is why I ended up upgrading to a more expensive set with their tubes, because it is cheaper to buy these in pans, but I think they last just as long, if not longer, than the tubes would. You just can't get colors that are as dark. But the cool thing is that with these 24 pans and with the 12s in these tin configurations, you can put additional watercolor pans in them. You'll see that I have several in the middle here. I think I have 6 or 8 in this palette at the moment. And I took some of my tube watercolors that I didn't have a good match for in this set, and I just popped them in there. So it's very convenient to be able to add your own colors. I believe I just taped these guys in with some masking tape, and that holds them well enough. I mean, if I were to take this palette and swing it around, they'd probably come out, but then again, so would probably some of the pans that are already in there. So some concerns that people often have with cheap watercolors is, are they going to dry chalky? Are they going to dry a lot lighter? I'm going to say that no, this set does not get chalky, and they dry pretty similarly to the colors you lay down. There's not really a color shift more significant than the other paint pans that I was just using that I poured myself from the tubes. So yeah, these are a great set. The only cons that I would say are the same as the cons for the ones before. You can only get them on Amazon and AliExpress, so if that is not your speed, then unfortunately you're going to be out of luck with these. And the dark colors are not as dark as the ones that you can get in the tube sets, which is pretty typical of any watercolor that is dry versus ones coming out of a tube. The only really dark colors in this set are one of the blues on the bottom left, the second one over, and then it comes with a black, but as I've mentioned before, I don't really love using black. I am using it here because it's the darkest color in this set, and I was trying to really give a range of what you can do with this set, but I would have preferred to have a Payne's Gray in that slot and maybe a true indigo somewhere in this set. But like I said, you can easily get tubes and supplement this by putting in your own pans. So yeah, I would recommend this. It's a great little travel set, especially if you are on the go. It's a lot better than all of the comparable sets I have tried with, like, you know, buy this, it has 24 colors and it's a travel set with everything you need in it, like a brush and a sponge. Don't get those sets, they're not worth it. The palettes are cute, but I find that the sponges are basically worthless after the second or third painting. Even though I clean mine pretty rigorously, I can never really use them like I could the first time. And the big number of colors in those is a gimmick, and it will help you more to learn how to mix watercolors properly to work with a more limited set. 24 is a lot for beginning, so there is also a 12 version of this set, but if you want more of the convenience colors, I would get the 24 set. I learned on this set, and while there were more colors and it was a little overwhelming, it was nowhere near as overwhelming as like the 48 sets and 36 sets I had tried previously that are just not worth your time at all. They're not worth your money, your time, the paints are crap. I find that a lot of art supply brands that focus on a different range of supplies will also include a watercolor range of art supplies, and they just generally aren't great. Art and Fly comes to mind. They were a marker company originally and then expanded into watercolors, but they don't do a good job with their watercolors. Their watercolors are very poor. That was the first set I ever got, and I hated them. Arteza also has a watercolor range, and while they don't have a focus art supply, like they kind of do a little of everything, I found that their watercolors dried kind of chalky and were hard to activate. I didn't like them. I also like this set a lot better than my Winsor Newton paints. I had the Cotman series paints, which is their student grade, and I found that the Paul Rubens set was way easier to use. I got them both at around the same time as gifts from my mother, and this set outperforms the Cotman set by a mile. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this if you're buying your first set, or if you have been disappointed with watercolor sets in the past. This is a great place to start. I really love this palette. I really love Paul Rubens. Their paper is incredible. And I'll do a video at some point just about budget watercolor paper, because my favorite watercolor papers are all in the budget range. I have used the more expensive stuff and I'm like, well, this is alright, but I don't think I know enough about how watercolor papers are supposed to perform to use them to their fullest extent. So the budget ones work fine for me, and if they would work fine for you, stay tuned for that video. I mean, half of it is already in this video. It's Paul Rubens. They make really nice watercolor paper, but the downside is they don't sell it in pads in America. I believe on AliExpress you can get it in larger pads in different sizes, but if you're looking just on Amazon, you can only really get the blocks and the sketchbooks easily. That may have changed in the last couple of years, because it's been a while since I bought these from Amazon. I got the last sets of Paul Rubens stuff that I ordered from AliExpress towards the beginning of the pandemic, so do let me know in the comments below if you know otherwise, and feel free to roast me just non-stop for not researching my videos. So yeah, we're about finished with this painting here. Everything else is just kind of darkening up areas. I was really happy with how dark I was able to get this green color. It was really lovely to work with. I think I'm going to try to work with these paints a little bit more often. I feel like I've kind of sold them short in my own mind, and using them again for this painting was a reminder like, oh hey, this is a really nice set, and it's very easy to carry around, and I just really enjoy it. So yeah, I think you will enjoy it too. There are affiliate links in the description for where you can get them on Amazon, if that's your thing. And I hope this was informative for you. I hope you learned something about these paints. I wanted to give a little bit of a announcement here. I'm going to be trying to vary my content a little bit going forward and experiment and see what works best for me. So you may start seeing some other things, like maybe some art and music, or maybe art paired with storyboards. We'll take a look into what works for all of us and we'll see what happens. So this is the finished piece. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and like and subscribe and come back next time. Bye-bye!